Hey guys, and welcome back for another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a harvesting apron. Now if you don't know what a harvesting apron is, it's basically a regular apron, but instead it has a large pocket on the front so that you can harvest all of your fruits and vegetables this growing season. So if you are growing, this is definitely going to be your best friend. If you know a grower, this would be an amazing gift to give, even for Mother's Day coming up. So I'm just going to give you a little look at me wearing it. So this is me wearing it. As you can see, it has a large pocket in the front. It has these ties that are in the front. And what you do is you untie the tie, let out the fabric, and then you're able to dump your harvest into another basket. And then once you're done, you can cinch it up, and then you're able to get your hands into the front of the apron. This is really great because then you don't have to carry a basket throughout your garden. And if you're like me and you like to plant things really close together, you're not going to really have much room to walk. So to have this apron on is going to be so easy to be able to just grab it and then put it right into your little pouch. So of course, with all of my tutorials, I will have the measurements over at the blog post. That'll be linked down in the description box below. Over there you'll find the measurements, any links to tools and materials that I use, and of course any more information that you possibly could need for this tutorial. Also, I do make a photographed PDF. So if you're not interested in watching the rest of my video and you would like to get your hands on a PDF, or maybe even to print it out and you can put it in your own records, I have that over at the Etsy shop for sale, so you can go over there and support me and then grab that PDF for yourself. I also have Patreon, and Patreon, I have members who support me over there, and then any of the PDFs that I've developed, I give to my Patreon members for free. So many options to be able to get your hands on all of the different resources I have for this beautiful apron. I really like to cater to all different skill levels and learning ways. Like, I'm a visual learner, so I like to have a video, but I know some people like to read, so I like to have all options available for all like learning levels. I don't even know what they're called. But anyways, so if you do make this, I would love to see it. So come over to Instagram and Facebook if you're not already, and follow and share a photo of your apron if you do decide to make one, so that I can share with the rest of the community. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about the type of fabric we will be using. Today I'm going to be using a cotton linen. It's absolutely beautiful. I love cotton linen. It's all natural. You can even buy organic cotton linen, but as you can see, it has this beautiful texture to it. It doesn't really have a right or wrong side. Like, there is a bit of, like, you can see there is a little bit of a right or wrong side. But if you're making a project where you're gonna see the back or the front of the fabric, you're not gonna really notice the difference that much unless you really, really look. So for this project, you kind of wanna have a fabric that is nice on both sides. So that's why I'm gonna do this solid, beautiful cotton linen, but you can of course buy lots of other different fabrics like canvas, cotton, anything that has, you know, it's nice on both sides. You can make it out of a fabric that has one right side, but the large portion of the apron would need to be cut in half and then sewn back together so that you could, you know, so you would avoid seeing the wrong side of the fabric. So ideally for this project, I would stick with a fabric that has a nice, nice on both sides. So we're gonna go through the pieces that we're gonna need. So this is the large piece. So this is gonna be for the main apron. It's been folded in half, but it is very large. All the measurements, like I said, are over at the blog post. So if you haven't already checked there, click in the description box or in the comment section. I have the link to the blog post, so you can go over there and grab your measurements. Then we have this piece, which is the waistband. We have two of these long strips. This is going to be for the cincher ties in the front of the apron. We have two slightly wider long strips of fabric, and this is going to be for the ties that go around your back and you tie your waist or your apron onto your waist. I'll have two measurements in the pattern. I am I have a thicker waist. I don't know how to the best way to say this. So I need a little bit more extra room in my ties, so I'm going to make them a little longer. But if you are, you know, a thinner person or just like a standard size, I'll have that in the blog post. And then I have one more little piece, and that's going to be for the cinchers again. It's going to be a little loop piece. So the only other thing that I will be using in this tutorial is one of these guys. This is sort of like a loop turner or a threader. These are really handy to have. I also might use one of these. This is to thread your drawstrings through casings and things. So if you don't have anything like this, I'll have links over at the blog post, and you can grab a couple of those. They're really inexpensive, and they definitely help reduce the headache in a project like this. There is other ways, of course, to do this, but I definitely like having these tools on hand. Okay, so I have my iron heating up, so we're gonna do a few things here. So for these ties, this is going to be your waist tie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tie and I'm going to fold it with the right sides together if you have right-sided fabric. And we're just going to do that all the way down. I'm not going to press this, but I am going to sew along this long edge. I'm going to close up one end, and because this is a apron, I am going to do a little bit of, you know, something cute. So I'm just going to like kind of round that off, because most aprons kind of have that. So I'll just start from this corner and I'll round up here, and then I'll go all the way down to the very end. So I'm going to do that for both of these ties. So if you need to, you know, mark your little path, I use just a little white pencil here. And then that'll just be easy for you to be able to visualize. And even if you have a template, you can make templates or whatever, but I think that this looks super cute. You can, of course, just do a seam this way and then go straight down. But it's really up to you and the type of style that you want it to look like. So we're gonna do that. Since I'm already here, we'll just talk about the next ones, which is gonna be the little ones. And we're going to take these, and again, we're just going to go like this. For these ones, I'm going to do a box. I'm going to box off that. So I'm just going to go down here, and then, remember this is right sides together. We're going to go all the way down. This piece we're going to actually flip right sides out. So we're going to use this portion that's going to be sewn closed, and we're going to go inside and we're going to pull it out. You'll see later on, of course, but depending on your fabric, it might be a little bit difficult to do that. So I'm going to show you quickly how I make a different type of strap if you want to. So this goes for the part that goes around your waist as well. So you can do whatever you think looks the best, or whatever type of fabric. So if you have more heavier weight fabric, then you're probably going to want to do this, because you won't be able to flip your fabric right side out. So for something like this, I would just fold it. And this is with the wrong sides together. So we're looking at the pretty side of the fabric. We're folding it once, opening it up. Fold it again. Fold it to line up with that center crease. Press. Line up the other side. Now this takes a little longer, and that's why I like to do it the other way. And then you fold it again. And then you would just do a stitch along that to close it, and you'll have a nice tie. I would also take this and fold that in just to finish off this. And you don't need to do both ends, because the other end is going to be sewn into your project. We'll do that. So this is one style, but this isn't the style that I'll be using today. But if you want to do it this way, you can do that with the ties that go around your waist, as well as the ties that cinch in front of the apron. Okay, and then the little piece here, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to fold that, and we'll sew right down the edges. Okay, so first we're going to sew this sash. So what I'm going to do is have those right sides of the fabric. We're going to start about 1/4 of an inch in. We'll start at the fold, and then I will just start to sew. Hopefully you can see. And we're just going to curve around. Until we get to be about 1/4 of an inch away from the raw edge of the fabric. And then we'll just lift our presser foot, and then we will start doing a straight stitch all the way down, lining up our presser foot with the edge of your fabric. I'm just going to do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So this is how it is going to look. Yeah, there you go. Super cute. I really like the way that that looks. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do the second one super fast. Okay, so now we're going to work on those ties. So like I said, we have our ties. They are right sides together. If you have a right side, wrong side type of fabric, we're just going to start by boxing off this short side, and we're just going to do another 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, maybe less, making sure our edges are lined up. And we're just going to go straight down. So we have this closed off, and we're going to go straight down. Okay. So that is how it's going to look. There is our little end right there. And then we're going to do the second one in the same way. We'll do this one super fast too. Okay, and then the last little tie here, we're just going to do the same thing, but we're just not going to box off the ends because it doesn't matter. Those are going to be sewn into a seam. So we're just going to do right down the side, and that's it. Now we have all of our pieces sewn. This is, like I said, the cotton linen, and cotton linen is a woven fabric. And if you don't know what a woven fabric is, just think of it like a woven basket. So all the threads are just kind of woven together. Because of that, you do tend to have frays, as you call them. I'm going to use pinking shears, and I am going to use that to cut off my excess fabric. This is going to help to reduce the fraying. If you are still concerned about your fabric fraying, you can also finish off your edges. So if you want to stick these pieces through a serger, or you want to do a zigzag stitch just along the raw edge just to kind of prevent further fraying, you can do that too. But this, if you don't have pinking shears, they are great for projects like this. So I'm just going to do the raw edges before I go ahead and flip my pieces right side out. Get a lot of fun pieces like that laying around. Okay, so now we can work on flipping these right sides out. So I'm going to use my little tool here, and I'll show you quickly on this little guy. So basically I just stick the tool through my fabric, and then there's a little hook. Hopefully you can see that. There's a little hook, and I just like to kind of hook it onto the fabric and then carefully try not to unhook it. Pull the fabric through. Once you get it going, then it's not as difficult. There we go. Okay. There. So then I'll like stick it through. I'll use like a knitting needle and put that through the loop too, just to kind of push on my seam, and then it'll be like that, and then we can press that. So now I'm going to do the rest. So like with the tie, we're going to go all the way down, and this is a closed end, so there will be slight damage using this method. You could put a safety pin onto the end of this and then just carefully push it back through. There we go. Not too much damage. And then I stick that knitting needle right down there, poke out the corner of my little sash, and then I run it along the seam. And then we can press out. So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do all the rest. This one will be a little bit more difficult just because it is thinner, but definitely doable. That's why this tool makes it easy. But if you don't want to do all this stuff, then you can make it the way that I showed you before, where you're just going to fold the pieces and then just iron it and then sew it. So it just depends on the fabric and what you like, what you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy doing this, then if you would rather just iron all your little strips. I remember one time I made baby bumpers for my son's crib, and I had to make, you know, a billion of these, and it took forever. Okay, so now we're just going to press all of their little ties that we made. And I am going to do a top stitch just to finish all of these pieces off. You can skip that part if you want to, or just do a top stitch along the seam edge. Go all the way around. It's whatever you think looks best. Just try and keep that seam that's just laying right on the side there. So you can see my little sash. I think it looks really cute like that. And then our little tie. And then our little cinchers. These are a little bit more fiddly to press. A little bit. I'm just gonna kind of like roll it in your finger sometimes. or put that, oh, I can't put it in that side. Really helps to push out those seams. So I'm just going to go ahead, take all of these pieces back over to the sewing machine and do a nice top stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to do like a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I just bumped up my stitch length to a 3. I like having it a little longer when I do top stitching. And then we'll just start at our raw edge and we'll go all the way around the sash. We'll go up and around the curve. When we get to the end, we're going to leave our needle in, raise the presser foot, pivot, and then go back down. Go. There you go. Okay, so that is how it's going to look. Super cute. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly do the rest. Okay, now we're going to work on the actual apron part itself. So here is my large piece of fabric. So it is folding in on itself. So this is lengthways and shortways. So it's longer this way than it is this way. This is the way that it's going to go, and it's very wide, but it's all going to be gathered together. So this part is going to have those drawstrings, and then this part is going to be gathered up. So the first thing we're going to do is work on hemming the top of this. So this is the orientation that I want it to be. This is going to be the front of my apron. So I'm just going to open up the fabric and I'm going to hem and fold down the top of this. And I'll do just like 1/4 of an inch and then 1/2 inch. And this is going to create the casing for our little cincher cords. I'll do it all the way to the end. Go back to the beginning, and then we'll fold it down 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Probably 3/4 of an inch is best because our ties are about 1/2 inch wide. So this is, again, I'm going to put it the way it's supposed to be. So we're hemming on the inside of the apron. Now we're going to find the center of the front and the back of the apron. So I'm just going to bring the ends together, and I'm going to put a marking. Just going to use a piece or a white marking tool, and then I'm going to do the same with this side. And for this side you can use the marking tool, or you can just put a little clip in it so in case it rubs off, because we are gathering that side, so you might accidentally mark it off. So this will come off in the wash, so I'm not too worried about seeing it. Okay, so that's how this is going to go. Now we're going to put in a buttonhole into this marking here. So that's why we marked this. We're gonna go over to the sewing machine and we're gonna use our buttonhole foot to put a hole there. And then our ties are gonna come through here to be able to cinch them. Now, I will show you when we're over at the sewing machine. If you don't want to do a buttonhole, you don't have to. There is another way of doing this. So I'll show you over there. But for now, let's go over and do a buttonhole here. And then we will put a line of stitches along the top. Long line of stitches, and that's going to be for the gathering. And then we will probably hem this. Once the buttonhole's done, then we will hem along that folded edge just to hem that nicely. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put a buttonhole into the center marking. So I've folded up those hems that we pressed. This is the center, and I've kind of just drawn, and I even used a button just to kind of gauge how big I wanted my buttonhole to be, because we want it to, when you fold it down, we want the buttonhole to be kind of on the fold. So the fold is going to be the center of where the buttonhole is going to be. So I just kind of put a button here just to kind of show me this is the button I'll use for my buttonhole foot. If you don't already know how to use a buttonhole, I do have a video I just posted, and that is going to be like sort of just an addition to this video, just in case you want a more comprehensive how to use a buttonhole foot. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it quickly without much instruction, assuming that you maybe already know how to use one. Okay, so I'm going to bring the fabric up from this side and the buttonhole, we're going to start on this end of the line, the long line. We're just going to start here, and I'm just going to, I've already set my machine. I pull down my little lever here. I set it to 59, which is just like a box buttonhole, and it's going to go this way and then back up again. So let's just get started. This is an automatic buttonhole machine, so if you have a manual, I don't exactly know how to use that, as I've only ever had automatic buttonholers. You'll have to refer to your user manual if you have an older machine like that. Okay. So this is how it's going to look. We're going to grab our stitch ripper. We'll put a hole, or we'll rip that in between the stitches. Don't rip the stitches, just in between. And now you can see that when we go to fold it back again, we will have a nice hole there for our ties to come out of. Super cute. So now we're just going to do a regular stitch right along, and I'm going to just do a 3 stitch length, and we'll go along here. Now this is creating that casing for those ties. So you want to have it as close to here so that we have a nice generous casing there. Now we're coming down to our buttonhole. If you didn't do the buttonhole, this is where you could leave a gap. So you would come up to here and you would back stitch, and then you would stop your machine, cut your threads, and then you would begin again. So I would stop like here, and then I would do my locking stitches take it out of the machine and then come a little further and then begin again. And then you basically create your little hole there, and that is great for your ties to come out of. I like this because I like my ties to be able to come out the front of the apron. So whatever you're most comfortable with, you at least have some options. Okay, so that is how the front is going to look, which is super cute. And now we'll go to the other end of our, and I'm going to pull my thread because it's somewhat short, and we're just going to move our needle over, and then I'll just show you with my machine. I'm just going to bring up my stitch length, and then that's a 5, and now this means my needle position's all the way over, and we'll just go right along this edge, and we'll do a quick gathering stitch. If you have a gathering foot, you could use that, but I do need to gauge the size of my gather, so that's why I'm doing it this way. It gives me some greater control. If you want to do 2 row stitches, some people like to do that. You can do that as well. It does tend to give you a more uniform gather, I hear. So now I have done that. We have nice long stitches, and then this will be easier to be able to pull. So you're just going to go to your end, and you're just going to grab like the top thread, and then you can start to pull. We'll do that over at the cutting table. Okay, so we have that row stitching. We have our hem done and our cute little buttonhole. Isn't that so sweet? I love it. Okay, so now we're going to take our strands or our ties. So as you can see, there's a pretty good amount of space, plus once you cinch it up, then you'll have a good amount of room to be able to tie it off in a little bow. So now we're going to go ahead and thread those. So we're just going to take this little tool again. We're going to go inside our buttonhole. We'll grab our tie, and then we'll just put it in there, hopefully. Oh, I got stuck. Okay, so I'm just gonna go the opposite way. Here we go. I'll grab the end, and then we'll just pull it through just like that. And then you just want to pull it so that this is lined or flush with that, and we can do the same. And if you want to do like just tack those, you know, just do some tacking stitches along that end, you can do that as well. I'm just going to put some clips there on the end. Okay, so now we can work on doing, we're going to sew up the sides. So to sew up the sides, we're going to do a French seam. So if you've never heard of a French seam before, it's a type of seam where if you don't have a lining inside of something, we're going to basically enclose the raw edges of the end of, or the sides of this apron, so that we don't have to line it. Because if you just kind of sewed it with the right sides together, then you would have this raw edge, and then when you go inside of it, it won't look as pretty, especially if you're going to make this as a gift for somebody. So what I like to do is a French seam, and to do a French seam, it's very easy. What you're going to do is we're going to line up the sides, and we're going to actually put it so that it is a 1/2 inch down. So the front of the apron's gonna be 1/2 inch down, and then we're gonna, and again, this is with the pretty sides on the outside. So this isn't inside out. This is just normal right sides out. we're gonna do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then after that, we're gonna flip it inside out. And we'll do another seam down the side of the apron. And then that is going to sort of enclose your raw edges. And then you will have a nice finished edge. So we're doing a 1/4 of an inch here. And then when we turn it inside out, we're gonna do probably a 1/2 an inch because we want to make sure that we can enclose the raw edges. So it has to be a little bit bigger than the first seam allowance that we did. So when you go over this, make sure you're going over your tie too to make sure you lock it into place. If you want to back stitch a little bit just to strengthen those stitches. We're just going to go all the way down, trying to keep this a small seam allowance. That's just going to prevent us from using up all of our fabric. We don't want to hide too much fabric in the seam because then you're just going to make your apron smaller. So that is how it is. If you can hear my dog, he's panting right now. So we're just gonna go ahead and do the other side. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over to the ironing board and flip it right side out. Okay, so you don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to iron it if you don't want to. You want to make sure that your seams are good, especially on the woven. Sometimes if you get too close to the edge, you'll end up kind of ripping the seams. But I want to press it to make sure that my seam is all the way pulled to the side, because we're going to do another stitch on top, and then that is going to lock in those raw edges and you're not going to see them. So we want to bring that seam right to the edges. And the top here, because that isn't part of it, we have that 1/2 an inch. We're just going to fold that we'll just fold that and then press that in. And we'll press it again once we turn it right side out, because technically it is inside out. Poke out that corner, make sure that there's no holes in your seam. Just like that. All the way down. And I say to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but you really just want to make sure that you sew a large enough seam allowance to hide those raw edges in between here. And even if you find that you have a larger seam allowance here and you're like, oh, it is a little big, you can go in and snip this down or use your pinking shears to give yourself less, and then you don't have to make this seam as large. So we're going to go ahead and just do that quick. Okay, so we're just going to start up there. We'll do, and you can see how that fabric is folded, how much room you're going to give yourself if your seam is nice and even at least. All right, so we'll give it like a 1/2 inch. Should be good. Just gonna sew. Secures those ties also again, which is nice. And you can feel your edge there. Right to the end. There you go. Perfect. That's how it's gonna look. And now when we look on the inside, it is, wow, there's some strands just because it's a woven fabric, so, but that raw edge is hidden completely. And then this is the inside, which looks nice and finished. So we'll go ahead and do the other side quick. Okay, so now we're going to work on putting the waistband on. So we have this piece. What we're going to do is we're going to fold up the ends a 1/2 inch, and that's going to sort of give us a starting and an ending spot, as well as make things easier as we're attaching it. Now we can take our apron and we can grab the strand on the one side, just like grab the top one or bottom one, doesn't matter, whatever one is gonna easily pull the fabric. I'm gonna start to gather slowly. And if you want to gather from both sides, you can do that. Sometimes I find that easier because you could essentially pull that thread right out. So I'm just going to grab a thread and then just slowly just kind of gather it along. Now that waistband we have, we want to gather it to measure the inside of this fabric. So those hems that we put in, sort of the folds, we want it to measure from those creases that we made. Okay, so we're just going to do it as evenly as possible. And if you want to just gather this a little bit just to get it out of the way, you're just going to need to try to keep it like, it will want to go like this, but we want it to go like that. Okay, so we're going to start by putting the back down, and we will attach that onto the back first. Okay, and we have a little marking here for the center of the back. So we're going to take this fabric and we will fold it in half, and you can just put a little snippet in there, and then we will put those together. And sometimes I find it's easier to pin the gathers than clipping, so I'm going to use pins this time. And then I'm just going to try to make it even. So I'm going to just have this folded crease right along this edge, so you can see that. Okay, so the fold in this fabric is going to line up with that edge, and then we'll put a pin. So you can see that it lines up there, and we'll do the same on the other side. We're not going to sew this down, we're going to keep it open, but we're going to sew up to that crease. Okay, now that I have these 3 points pinned, then I can sort of redistribute. And you can flip it so that you can see it better. And just put a pin like that. Just as even as you can make it, and make sure that that fabric here is flat. We only want the top to be gathered. And then we will do like a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that seam allowance is going to line up with the top of that. Okay? So we're going to go right across there, and it's going to line up that seam with these, with the front of the apron. Okay, so I'll do it from the top just so that I can see that I'm getting all of my gathers in nicely, making sure that everything, so when you get down to it, you're just going to make sure that the raw edges are lined up together. Okay. All right. Lined up nicely. Perfect. And taking out the pins as I go. Okay, and we're going to end right at the top of that fabric, right where we left that crease. I just need to pull my thread and then bring it back a bit. Okay, there we go. Gather it up a bit. Oop, going too far. That's okay. All right. Okay, so this is how it's looking. So here is the front, and this is the back. Looks really nice and gathered. I'm absolutely obsessed with this. So you're gonna take this and you're actually gonna fold up that raw edge. And we're just gonna press that. Just like that. Perfect. Okay. And then we're going to fold down the top of this about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, and we'll just do a good pressing. And we've already have this still pressed, so we're just going to repress that. We'll fold that side in, try to make this corner nice, like that. And we'll do it on this side. Okay. So now we're going to take this and we're going to fold it in half like this. And we want to make sure that that stays up, folding it down. And we're just going to do it just slightly past the seam that we used to sew on this waistband. And we're just going to do a top stitch to secure this on. And make sure that any of that fabric that's sticking out is kind of enclosed in there. I'm just gonna go like that, and then I will pin if I can. That's a horrible pin. Okay. It's easier to kind of keep things in place when you're actually at the machine. But you just want to hide those stitches. That's all you want to do. And so when you're sewing, you're going to be sewing like 1/8 of an inch down this band here. So here is, so as you can see, I just tucked in anything that was sticking out there. And then we're going to take our last step, which is going to be your little sashes. And we are going to slit those. I'm going to go like this. My apron is upside down right now. And then I'm just going to take it and I'm going to stick it in that hole. And then I'm going to have it so that it's kind of lined up with the top there. And I'll just pin that down. So when you do this, you're going to end up going all the way around, securing your little sashes onto it. So just like I have fur on this now because of the kitty. Put that in, just tuck it in like 1/2 inch. And so before we sew that, we just have one last little thing. We need this little tie that we made. Now I still have my little notch here in the fabric, so we know that's the middle. So this is where I want it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of go like that. Do I want it that way or that way? I don't know what's correct. Let's do this way. It might be wrong. But you're also going to stick this in there too. And then go right here. Make it a little long so you don't have to struggle when you're trying to stick your ties through it. All right, there you go. Okay, now you can sew all the way around that. Okay, so it doesn't really matter where you start, but you do want to be along this edge, making sure that we do not expose the stitches. And we can start. Oh dear. Just gonna go back over that. Double tack it. Trying to make sure nothing is sticking out.
Go right to the corner, and then we're going to keep that needle in, pivot, and then we'll go up. And then we will again and you don't have to do this, you don't have to do this top stitch, but I think it looks cute, so I'm going to do it. You definitely need to do the ends though to make sure your sashes are installed. Okay, got a lot of thread sticking out there. Just make sure nothing is hanging out. You just need to turn it one more time just to finish off. Okay, so we have everything done. I think it looks so good with that top stitching. Now we can cinch up the front a little bit. And this little tie is just so that when you actually have things in here, like if you're going to be harvesting tomatoes or something like that, it's going to want to hang this down. So when you get a lot in, then you can kind of put that through. Just put a bow. And then, but even then you can have it like kind of just done up and then have it kind of hanging down so that you can easily just slip your hands in there. And then we have our cute little sashes. I think it's so adorable, and it's going to be perfect for when you're out growing your own garden this year. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Comment down below if you have any questions, and of course look out for that PDF if you want to print this out so that you can have it in your own library. And if you aren't already, over on Patreon, if you support me over there, then that pattern will be for free for download over there. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!